Before we jump into John's podcast, if you've ever felt like you should be reading more or thinking more deeply about the world, but didn't know where to start or who to do it with, we just launched something for you. It's an online book club and community with Dr. John Patrick. Starting this February, we'll go through important books together, guided by Dr. John, with live discussions and a thoughtful group of people who want to grow in wisdom, clarity, and critical thinking. It's free to join right now, but we may introduce paid access later. A benefit, if you do join now, you'll get exclusive early access to a live Q&A with Dr. Patrick. So if that sounds like something that you want to be a part of, don't wait. Just click the link in the description or show notes to join, and we'll see you inside.
Hello, everyone. I'm starting in a little different way today because I'm going to simply read quite a large chunk from a book. I did it once in the past, and it's this time of year it comes to mind because I think it's just a beautiful story, basically, the way it's written. It's by a woman called Elizabeth Goudge, and the book was actually published in the early 1950s. This time of year, of course, spring is beginning to approach in Israel. And what she does in this book, which is called God So Loved the World, is give what I think is one of the most beautiful accounts of Mary that I know, and it is just simply beautiful. So here we go. We have thought a little of his people, his country, and his name and time, and now we come closer to him and think of his mother. She lived in a village called Nazareth in Galilee, to the north of Palestine. We can imagine ourselves travellers approaching Nazareth on the evening of a day in early spring. All around is the scene of great beauty, for the February rains are just over, and this country that has for the greater part of the year is dusty and arid, is now fresh and green. Behind us, as we toil up the steep rocky path, is the beautiful plain Esdraelon. To the east are the mountains of Moab, while the snow-capped peak of Mount Hermon shines out against the sky. There were many trees in Palestine in those days. The lower slopes of the hills are wooded with cedars and oaks and ilexes, and all about us as we climb up to the village are terraces of vines and olives. Though it is such a steep climb up to Nazareth, the village itself lies sheltered in a hollow surrounded by steep hills. The white homes are small, the poorer houses roofed with branches, the larger ones with small stone domes. Some of the bigger houses have gardens about them planted with fruit trees, figs, citrons, almonds, and pomegranates. The almond trees are just coming into bloom, and here and there is a frost of pink blossom over a garden wall. The atmosphere is crystal clear, and the sky a deep blue flecked with golden clouds. The colour on the hills is very wonderful. Purple and rose, tawny orange, and shadows sharp and dark, for this is a land of brilliant, pure colour and vivid contrasts, like the life that we are going to try to follow. We are in Nazareth now, walking up a narrow cobbled lane between houses. The men have not yet come home from their work in the fields, and the people whom we pass are women and children. They are poor people, and the women wear long dresses of blue and brown cloth that they have woven themselves on their looms, while the white veils on their heads protect them from the sun. But they have woven bright garments for their children, and the little things run along beside them looking very gay, the boys with small round caps on their heads or turbans bound with a fillet of imitation of their fathers, and the little girls with veils like their mother. Most of the women are going to the spring to fetch water, so that their husband and sons can wash themselves when they sit down to evening meal. Some of them carry their water pots on their shoulders. Others balance them on their heads. The water at Nazareth gushes from a hillside, very clear and cold. You can see the same spring today and hear it call Mary's Fountain. The women linger longer here, exchanging village gossip with each other, sometimes lowering their voices to talk a little of the sorrows and dangers of the times. But as much as they can, they like to forget these and talk of the small happy affairs of the village that make up the brightness of their lives. They are pleased that Joseph bar Jacob, the village carpenter, is going to marry Mary, the daughter of Anne. They like Joseph, and they are talking about him as they stand by the spring, taking their turn to fill their water pots. He's a just man, they say of him, and they mean a good deal by that great word, just. They mean that Joseph is trustworthy, that when he gives his word, he does not go back on it, and when he has undertaken a job of work, he does it as well as he can, right through to the end. And they mean also that he is a good man, whose life is clear like the mountain air, and whose words and deeds are kind. Mary's lucky, they say, that he has chosen her for his wife, and Anne is lucky that she can give her daughter into such safe keeping. And then they pause in their talk, because Mary herself is coming up the lane with her water pot. What does she look like? No one seems to have written down a description of her, but we are told that she belonged to a tribe that in appearance is very like the modern Bedouin Arab. That means that she's olive-skinned and slender, with soft dark eyes. Girls marry very early in Palestine in those days, and she is about 14 or 15 years old. She wears a blue homespun dress with a white veil on her dark hair, and on top of her head is a pad with the water pot balanced upon it. She has trained herself not to touch the pot with her hands as she walks, and this has taught her to hold her back straight and her head high, and to walk with the grace and dignity of a queen. Out of all the women that have ever lived upon this earth, or who will ever live, this village girl is the one whom God chose to be the mother of his son. And so we know that she was as perfect a woman as any woman can be, lovely in mind and in spirit as well as in body, and like all lovely people, very much loved. She must have been strong and sturdy too, like all country girls trained to hard work, and we know that from what happened afterwards that she was extraordinarily brave. So the other women were glad to see her at the spring, and she was glad to see them. They talked to her about Joseph and teased her a little, and her cheeks flushed pink with happiness and her eyes were bright with laughter as she lifted up her water pot on her head and held it beneath the gushing water. She stayed and talked to them for a while before she started to return home, one hand now holding the full pot steady on her head, walking very slowly and carefully so as not to spill the water. Looking about her as she walked at the great beauty of the world and thanking God for it in her heart. The great moments of our lives often come upon us unawares, and perhaps she did not know as she walked home with her water pot that before the night had fallen upon this lovely land, something would happen to her that would have changed her from a girl into a woman, and open for her a door into heaven that would never again be shut. The great artists of the world have loved to paint pictures of the thing that happened to Mary. They called it the Annunciation, and they've all imagined that it happened while she was saying her prayers. Without being artists, we too can paint pictures in our minds. Mary's home, like that of others in Palestine, was built round a small inner courtyard, with doors opening into it. The windows in the outer walls were mere slits, so that the noise and glare of the outer world was shut out. The room where Mary prayed was cool, quiet, with no sound in it except the whisper of the leaves from the fig tree growing in the courtyard. The Eastern people do not kneel to pray, they stand, and Mary stood with bent head and arms crossed upon her breast, and praised God and thanked him, and asked him to have mercy upon his handmaid. Perhaps she used her own words, or perhaps the words of the Psalms of David that she would have known by heart. Praise the Lord, O my soul. Have mercy upon me, O God, after thy great goodness. It is not difficult to imagine the thoughts that were uppermost to her mind as she prayed. Day by day she heard the talk at the spring. She knew all about the suffering of her country. And being so loving a girl, she must have carried the sorrow it always with her. And like all her people, she was watching day by day for the Holy One of Israel who would come to deliver his people. Perhaps as a little girl, she had sometimes looked out from one of the narrow windows of her home to see if she could catch sight of him riding up the valley below with his sword by his side, or run to the courtyard door at the sound of a strange footfall in the street, to see if it were he at last. Perhaps now, like King David, she cried in her heart with the voice of all her people, "Thou art my helper and redeemer. Make no long tarrying, O my God. Thou art my helper and redeemer. Make no long tarrying, O my God." But again, the dark background of sorrow and longing of her people, the thought of her own joy would have sprung up like a flower. Joseph and the children she would have, and their home where they would all live together. She would have prayed that it might be a happy home. And then perhaps through the door that opened on the courtyard, the light of the setting sun streamed so gloriously that she looked up, and in the courtyard, at that moment, the door was no longer just the door to the courtyard, but a door opening from earth into heaven. And now we do not have to use our imagination anymore, because Mary left a record of what happened to her. She thought that an angel came to her, stepping from heaven into her little room. Her people had always loved and reverenced those servants and messengers of God, the angels. King David had thought of the clouds and the winds as angels, and had dared to imagine them carrying God himself across the sky upon their wings. He rode upon a cherub and did fly. Yes, he did fly upon the wings of the wind. Isaiah had seen the terrible six-winged seraphim that stand about the throne of God, great and awful presences, who yet veil their faces with their mighty wings before the even more awful presence of God. Jacob had seen a ladder set up between earth and heaven, and the angels passing and repassing upon it. Abraham and other holy men had spoken with angels as a man speaks with man, and received from them commands and comfort and the strength of God. To four of these loving and lovely spirits, who sometimes stand at God's command, humble themselves to stoop beneath the low lintel of the door of earth and come to us, to the people of Israel. They had been given names: Raphael, Gabriel, Cassiel, and Michael. Mary believed it was Gabriel who came to her that day. She left no description of what he looked like, perhaps like the angel whom St. John saw on the island Patmos. A rainbow was upon his head, and his face was, as it were, the sun, and the light blinded her. That's really all that people who have looked into heaven are able to tell us, that it is light. But she knew what he said to her. "Hail, thou that art highly favoured, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women." In this story of an almost unbelievable humbling, this angelic humility takes place. This coming of Gabriel to Mary, the greeting of a young girl by a great angel with words of gentle courtesy. Some of the old painters have shown Gabriel kneeling before Mary like a courtier before his queen. He uttered these words that have always been called by the lovely name, the salutation. What did Mary do? She says she was troubled, wondering what manner of salutation this should be. She must have been afraid, because Gabriel's next words brought her the comfort of God to the frightened. "Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favour with God." She knew quite certainly for always that God loved her, and that whatever happened to her through the rest of her life, she would never have to be afraid. This certainty steadied her spirit, made it calm and peaceful like a still pond, so that she who was able to accept the amazing revelation of God that followed, as the quiet water was able to receive the reflection of the sky and stars above it, she was to be the mother of the Holy One of Israel, for whom she had watched for so long, the mother of the Son of God. Her watching and waiting were nearly ended now. In a few months' time, she would hold the Son of God in her arms, and he would be her son too. She, Mary of Nazareth, a 14-year-old girl whom the great world had never even heard of. She and no other was to be his mother. The angels told her this, and almost unbelievable the revelation must have been to her, yet in her quiet and loving spirit she was able to believe it. Yet though she was no longer frightened, she was appalled by the greatness and mystery of this thing that she was asked to do. This child, her child, was to be the Son of God and Israel himself, son of Joseph. She was asked to be the mother of God. How could that be? How could she do it? Who was she that this honor should come to her? She was not strong enough to bear it. How shall this be? She cried out to Gabriel. And we can picture her, no longer standing but crouched down on the ground with her face buried in her hands. This is how humble men and women always feel when God calls them to do something great for him. How can I do it? How can I possibly do it? The answer is always the same answer, the one that Gabriel gave to Mary. The Holy Ghost shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Not in their own strength. Mary, understand, the servants of God do the work to which he has called them. It's his work. What a man and a woman cannot do by themselves, they can do with God, who is with them. For God, nothing is impossible. And so the second great certainty came to Mary, and she lifted her head and opened her arms and said, Behold the handmaid of the Lord, be it unto me according to thy word. She knew a third thing now, that she loved God, who loved her, and whose power would never fail her. She had nothing to give him but herself, and so she gave herself. She loved him so much that she wanted only one thing now, to do his will, whatever it should cost her. It was to cost her a very great deal. She was to have great joy in her life, but great suffering too, and both of them so piercing that only a woman as strong and stout-hearted as Mary would have been able to endure them without breaking. Her worries began almost at once, for Joseph was deeply troubled when he found that she was to have a child who would not be his, but the direct gift of God to her. He too, like Mary, had been watching and waiting for the Holy One of Israel, and he knew the prophecy of Isaiah that foretold that a virgin of Israel should be the mother of the Messiah. But he had not expected that virgin to be Mary. It must have seemed as though this girl whom he loved had suddenly been taken from him. He felt shut out. She was no longer the Mary whom he knew, but someone mysterious and strange whom he could not understand. He did not know what to think about it all, and in this unhappiness and bewilderment he felt that he could not now marry her. Then one night, after he had lain awake, tormented by his doubts, he fell deeply asleep and dreamed that the door opened into heaven for him too, and an angel came to him out of the light with the same glorious message that had come to Mary. Fear not. He too, like Mary, when the light shone upon him, received into his soul, and to the utmost extent to which he was capable, to bear it. The knowledge that the Almighty, eternal God loved him. Joseph, the obscure carpenter of Nazareth, a poor and humble man, had called him to be the foster father of his son. When he woke up, there was no more doubt or bewilderment left in him. He wanted only to do the one thing that God wanted, who loved him and whom he loved. From that moment onwards, he did not question anything, but just did quietly and at once what he was told to do. About this time, perhaps, while Joseph was so troubled, and because he felt that he would be happier if she went away, Mary paid a visit to her cousin Elizabeth, who lived up in the hills in the country of Judea, southward from Galilee. Perhaps she travelled part of the way with friends who took care of her, and then parted from them at the foot of the hill, upon whose summit was perched the small white town where Elizabeth lived. It was later in the year now. The valleys were green with waving corn, and all over the slopes of the hills above them was spread the glory of the spring flowers. Those who have seen the flowers of Palestine say that the colour and beauty are almost unbelievable. They are scarlet and purple anemones, blue speedwell, blood-red pimpernels, yellow daisies, cyclamen and violets. Marigolds are the flame of gold under the sun, and the midday heat draws out the good smell of the aromatic things that she loved so much, and that Isaiah loved. I will plant in the wilderness the cedar and the myrtle and the oil tree, he wrote. I will set in the desert the fir tree and the pine and the box tree together. Mary, in her blue dress under the blue sky, must have climbed upwards towards the flowers almost joyously. Even though she was worried about Joseph, she would have to put the worry away from her, for this was to be a day of joy. Pulling a sprig of Isaiah's beloved myrtle, she would have remembered him and the glorious and glowing words that he had written to describe the Son of God. And his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. The Wonderful One would be her child. God was giving to his people, through her, their Saviour. Comfort ye, my people, saith the Lord. Not much longer now. Soon God would stoop from heaven to lay his Son in her arms, and her arms would give him to the world. She must have marvelled at the humility of God. He could have given his son to the world without her help. He could have sent him down from heaven in a blaze of glory. Yet he did not choose this lonely and lofty way. He chose to bend low and whisper to her, you and I. Yet this, she knew, is always God's way. For God is love, and love is something that cannot exist at all if there is only an I. There must be you and I. For the lover and the beloved, the lover honours the beloved, even if the one is the great God in heaven and the other is a peasant girl in a worn blue dress. Mary must have spent the whole of the rest of her life thanking God for the way in which he had honoured her, and one of her songs of thanksgiving, the Magnificat, has been sung down the centuries for love of her. Perhaps she began to make it up as she climbed the hillside, to fit in a time with her words and to sing it to the accompaniment of the wind in the pine trees. My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit hath rejoiced in God my Saviour. For he hath regarded the low estate of his handmaid. For behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed. For he that is mighty hath done to me great things, and holy is his name. And meanwhile, in a small home in the town at the top of the hill, Elizabeth was waiting at her window, waiting for Mary. And she was praising God because to her and her husband as well as to Mary and Joseph had come the great fear not, and to her too God had whispered, You and I. Elizabeth was married to a priest called Zacharias. They'd grown old in the service of God. They must have been a happy people, for the servants of God are always happy. But they had grief. They had no child. They prayed long and earnestly to God to give them one. But the years had passed, and they had grown old, and there was no child. So then, after the foolish fashion of men and women, they had imagined that God had not heard them. They had learned a good deal in long life, but not yet that God never fails to answer prayers. But he answers it in his way and at the moment that is best for everybody. And man who does not know all about everybody and cannot see the wonderful pattern of God and what he is weaving into their lives gets discouraged if the way is not to his liking and a moment delayed. Elizabeth's baby had to be delayed because God had chosen her child to do a particular piece of work for him at a special time. It had been foretold that a great prophet would be born upon the earth and that he would prepare the way of the Christ. In these days, when a king decided to visit the cities of his kingdom, a messenger would be sent running before him through the wilderness to tell people that he was coming, so that they could prepare the city and make ready to receive the king. Isaiah had described this forerunner. The voice of him that crieth in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. And to Elizabeth and Zacharias, God gave the great honour of being the mother and father of the forerunner. It was revealed, first of all, to Zacharias. He was in Jerusalem, the holy city of Israel. Now that he was old, the time had come for him to give up his life's work of serving God as a priest in the temple. And he was in the last week of his service there. The temple of Jerusalem was very beautiful. King Solomon had built the first temple, but it had been destroyed by enemy invasion and then rebuilt, and now it was being rebuilt again by Herod, the Jewish king who, in obedience to the Roman emperor, ruled this conquered country for him. It was built of marble and white limestone, lined with beautiful mosaics, with great open courts grouped around the high temple, the inner temple, the holy place, the Holy of Holies. Day by day, people gathered in the court outside the holy place to pray, but they did not go into the holy place, into which only the priests might go. They entered it in turn, perhaps only once in their lives, and burned incense there just as the dawn was breaking. Into the Holy of Holies the high priest might go, and only once a year. The day came when it was the turn of Zacharias to enter the holy place for his last time. Old and white-haired, dignified in his priestly garments of purple and white, he made his way through the temple courts, with 2 assistant priests on either side of him, and as he went he struck a gong to tell the people that the hour had come for the burning of the incense. The coming of man to God and God to man, their meeting and union. It's a thing so full of mystery that man has always had to use symbols or pictures to help him to understand a little of the wonder of it. The monks rising up from before the burning of incense was a picture. The smoke rising up from the burning of the incense was a picture of the prayers of the people rising up from their penitent hearts. And Zacharias burning the incense in the holy place was giving them to God. When the assistant priests had made everything ready, they withdrew, leaving Zacharias alone to burn the sacrifice. Standing before the altar in the holy place, he could see the door leading to the Holy of Holies. To many Israelites, this small, windowless room was the most sacred place in the world because it was the symbol of the presence of God dwelling with his people. Alone in the quietness, Zacharias bowed his head and worshipped, as Mary had done in the quiet room at Nazareth. And as the smoke of the incense ascended and he lifted up the prayers of his people to God, once more the door opened and the glory of God shone through. Zacharias saw an angel, formed all of light, standing at the right side of the altar, and like Mary, he was terrified. And then to him there came the great fear not. and he was comforted. And in the turmoil of this terror, and as the turmoil of his terror was quieted, it seemed that he heard a voice telling him that his prayer had been answered. He was to have a child, and he must call him John. Thou shalt have joy and gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth. The voice itself was as glorious as light, and the word falling like a flake of fire to lighten the darkness of his fear, and drive away all fear. He shall go before him to make ready a people prepared for the Lord, the forerunner. He was being told that he was to be the father of the forerunner, but he could not believe it. He was old. Elizabeth was old, and they had given up any hope of a child long ago. It was too wonderful to be believed. He wanted more proof that this light that blinded him and this voice speaking right into his soul, that might both of them be nothing but delusion. He could not believe without some sort of solid proof. Again came the voice in his soul, flooding it with light. I am Gabriel, that stand in the presence of God, and am sent to speak unto thee, and show thee these glad tidings. But still he cried out for proof, and his voice came again. Behold, thou shalt be dumb, and not able to speak, until the day that these things shall be performed, because thou believest not my words, which shall be fulfilled in their season. The light faded, the door was closed. Slowly he came back to himself. It seemed to him that he'd been on a long journey and had been an immense time away. He remembered who he was and where he was. Outside the holy place, the people were waiting for him. He had offered their prayers to God, and now he must go back to them and bless them. Staggering a little because he was a very old man and he had just experienced great fear, great gladness, and great doubt, he came out to them and saw the astonishment on their faces. So he had been a very long time away. He raised his hand and tried to pronounce the blessing that was given at this time. The Lord be merciful unto us and bless us, and lift the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace. But he could not, because no words would come. He had his proof. He was dumb. But it seemed to the people that the blessing came to them from the light upon his face, because the light they knew he had seen a vision. He went home, and as he could not speak, he must have written out an account of what had happened for Elizabeth to read. But perhaps she knew already. Perhaps God had already said to her, You and I will put your son in your arms, and you shall give him to the people to prepare the way. There was a light step in the courtyard, and a voice called, Elizabeth, Elizabeth. Looking through the window, Elizabeth saw Mary standing beneath the old fig tree which grew beside the well. She looked happy and eager, yet shy and humble at the same time. She was young, and Elizabeth was old, and Elizabeth had known her all her life, had loved her like her own child, and now she must find it hard to believe that this child, Mary, had been chosen out of all the women in Israel to be the mother of the Holy One. But Elizabeth did not find it hard to believe, because she was humble too, and like all the humble, she had great reverence for other people, even those whom she knew in and out, through and through, and had held in her arms when they were small. With her old face flooded with awe and joy, she came to Mary, and holding the girl's hands in hers, she bent her head as she thought she did honor her queen. Blessed are you among women, she said, and blessed be the fruit of your womb. And whence is this to me that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For lo, as soon as your voice, thy salutation sounded in my ears, the babe leapt in my womb for joy. And blessed is she that believed, for there shall be a performance of those things which were told her from the Lord. Then Mary put her arms round Elizabeth's neck and kissed her and clung to her, not at all like the queen whom Elizabeth had greeted, but like the child whom she had always loved as her own. I did not read that as well as I should, because whenever I read it, it moves me deeply, and That, of course, interferes with reading. But I hope that might also be part of something that gives you joy and a sense of reality of the story we inhabit, which so many other people, like Zacharias, find hard to believe, and why I do not know.